Welcome to This Explainer. Okay, today we're doing something incredibly ambitious. We're going to condense over 2,000 years of brutal invasions, apocalyptic plagues, and wild royal drama to uncover exactly how the modern English nation and literally the language you're hearing me speak right now were forged. We often think of England as this distinct, unchanging culture that just kind of went on to shape the modern world, right? But the truth hidden in the history books is way more fascinating. England is, without a doubt, the ultimate survivor's melting pot. So buckle up, because we're about to dive deep into the massive historical forces that completely shaped this island.
Let's take a quick look at our roadmap. We'll kick things off with early invaders and the Romans. Then we hit the Anglo-Saxons and Viking clashes. After that, it's 1066 and the Norman conquest, followed by plagues, peasants, and plantogenics. Then we'll cover the Tudors, Stuarts, and Civil War. And finally, we'll wrap up with the making of modern Britain. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. Early Invaders and the Romans. From prehistoric stone circles to Roman legions.
So, believe it or not, our story actually starts before Britain was even an island. Right around 11,000 years ago, melting ice sheets flooded this low-lying land bridge called Doggerland. Fast forward through the arrival of farming, the mysterious construction of Stonehenge around 4000 BC, and the spread of Celtic culture. And then, everything changed. The ancient world's undisputed superpower finally showed up. Julius Caesar actually tried and failed to conquer the island in 55 BC. It took nearly a whole century for Emperor Claudius to return in 43 AD and kick off a grueling, full-scale Roman conquest. And this marked the start of a roughly 400-year occupation that gave the island its very first major linguistic injection: Latin.
Now, the Romans left a massive, permanent footprint here. They literally founded major settlements that we still know today, like London, Chester, and York. And despite some really fierce native resistance, most famously from the Celtic queen Boudica, who led this massively bloody rebellion in 60 AD, the Romans locked down their territory. They even built the colossal Hadrian's Wall right across the north to hold the line. But as we know, empires just don't last forever. By the 5th century, Rome was totally crumbling. So, in 407 AD, they abruptly abandoned the island, withdrawing their legions to defend the continent from barbarian threats. And that departure? It left a massive, completely wide-open power vacuum.
Moving on to Section 2, Anglo-Saxons and Viking clashes, the Germanic migration, and the Norse threat.
With the Romans gone, the gates just swung wide open. First up were the Anglo-Saxons. These were migrating Germanic tribes in the 4th and 5th centuries who essentially came in and completely replaced the existing Celtic Romano-British culture with their own customs. They fractured the land into 7 independent kingdoms, places you might have heard of like Wessex, Mercia, and Northumbria. And crucially, they brought with them the actual Germanic roots of the English language. But just as they were getting comfortable and converting to Christianity, a brand new terror arrived from the sea. Starting with an infamous, totally isolated raid on the Lindisfarne Monastery in 793 AD, the Vikings swept in. And they quickly shifted from these hit-and-run tactics to a brutal, all-out campaign of total conquest. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle gave this invading force a seriously terrifying name: the Great Heathen Army. No joke. By 865 AD, this wasn't just a raiding party anymore. It was a systematic invasion that just crushed almost every single English kingdom, absorbing them into this Viking-controlled territory known as the Danelaw. Ultimately, only one kingdom was left standing, and that was Wessex. It was King Alfred the Great, who miraculously held the line right from the swamps of Wessex. Forced into hiding, he somehow managed to muster an army and actually push the Vikings back at the Battle of Edington in 878 AD. Then his grandson, Athelstan, went on the absolute offensive. He conquered York in 927 AD and adopted the title King of the English for the very first time in history. By winning the massive Battle of Brunanburh in 934, Athelstan officially secured a unified Kingdom of England. Pretty incredible stuff.
Which brings us to Section 3. 1066 and the Norman Conquest, the most pivotal year in English history.
So that hard-won unity we just talked about? It was completely shattered in a single chaotic year. It all kicked off when King Edward the Confessor died without an heir, which obviously sparked a massive succession crisis. The English nobleman Harold Godwinson took the throne, but man, he was immediately challenged. Harold had to march his entire army all the way north to crush a Norwegian invasion at Stamford Bridge in September, only to turn right around and literally sprint all the way down south to face another massive invasion just weeks later.
Exhausted, his army fell at the legendary Battle of Hastings on October 14th, and Harold himself was killed. By Christmas Day, the victor, Duke William of Normandy, was officially crowned king.
Now, William didn't just take the throne. He entirely restructured the country from the ground up. He commissioned the Domesday Book to survey his new kingdom, and the results were staggering. It revealed that the entire Anglo-Saxon aristocracy had been totally wiped out and replaced with French-speaking Normans. From this point on, French became the exclusive language of the ruling elite. And honestly, this is exactly why today we have totally different words for the animal in the field, like the Germanic word cow, and the meat on our dinner table, like the French word beef. The vocabulary of the elite permanently injected itself right into the English language we still use today.
Section 4. Plagues, Peasants, and Plantagenets, the chaos of the Middle Ages.
1/2. That is the estimated fraction of England's entire population wiped out by the Black Death. Arriving on ships from the continent in 1348, this plague just tore through the country in a mere 2 years. I mean, just imagine the absolute social and economic shockwave this caused. The dramatic drop in population left these massive labor shortages, which eventually sparked widespread unrest, like the Peasants' Revolt of 1381. The medieval period under the new Plantagenet kings was just a remarkably turbulent era. It was defined by reduced royal power, thanks to the Magna Carta, massive ongoing wars with France, and of course this apocalyptic disease. And as if that wasn't enough, the surviving nobility then completely fractured. This triggered a bitter 30-year civil war known as the Wars of the Roses. It was essentially a brutal tug-of-war for the crown between the White Rose of York and the Red Rose of Lancaster. The conflict finally ground to a halt in 1485 at the Battle of Bosworth Field. That's when Henry Tudor of Lancaster defeated the Yorkist king Richard III, effectively uniting the warring houses and birthing a brand new royal dynasty. Let's look at Section 5. Tudors, Stuarts, and Civil War, religious upheaval, and a king without a head. The Tudor dynasty absolutely plunged the country into religious whiplash. It all started with Henry VIII's desperate obsession with securing a male heir. When the Pope wouldn't grant him a divorce from his first wife, Henry literally broke the entire country away from the Catholic Church. He established the Protestant Church of England just to get his way. His 6 marriages are the stuff of legend, of course, but look at the total chaos his children caused. His son Edward pushed the country even further into Protestantism. Then his daughter Mary fiercely dragged it right back to Catholicism. Finally, Elizabeth I swung the pendulum back to Protestantism, overseeing this incredible golden age of literature with Shakespeare and scoring a huge military triumph over the Spanish Armada. 280. That is the grim number of Protestants burned at the stake by Henry's devoutly Catholic daughter during her very brief reign. Her ruthless attempts to reverse the Protestant Reformation and completely crush dissent earned her the chilling nickname Bloody Mary. This was truly a century of incredibly violent sectarianism.
All these tensions over religion and absolute royal power eventually exploded in 1642 into a literal civil war. The Stuart king Charles I straight up refused to cooperate with Parliament. So you had the Royalists fighting to maintain the king's supreme authority, clashing violently against the parliamentarian Roundheads, who were led by Oliver Cromwell's fiercely disciplined New Model army. The Roundheads ultimately won, and they did the unthinkable. In 1649, they executed King Charles I and briefly turned England into a republic.
And that brings us to Section 6, the making of modern Britain, empire, industry, and global dominance.
Though the monarchy was eventually restored after Cromwell died, the absolute power of the king was permanently broken for good. In 1688, the Glorious Revolution peacefully replaced the Catholic King James II with Protestant rulers who actually accepted the Bill of Rights, recognizing the supreme authority of Parliament. Fast forward to 1707, and the Acts of Union formally merged England and Scotland together into Great Britain. From there, Britain really rode the explosive economic and technological innovations of the Industrial Revolution to become the preeminent global superpower of the 19th century, commanding the absolute largest empire in human history. That global dominance remained largely unchecked, at least until the devastating financial and human costs of the world wars in the 20th century effectively bankrupted the nation and completely shifted the global balance of power.
So when you trace this entire history back, you realize something pretty profound. Modern England isn't just one static culture. It is the ultimate survivor's melting pot, fundamentally forged by 4 very distinct linguistic invasions. The Romans brought Latin. The Anglo-Saxons laid down the core Germanic foundation. The Vikings infused Old Norse.
and the Normans forcefully imposed French right from the top down. Every single wave of conquerors left an indelible mark on the tongue, creating the remarkably adaptable and incredibly rich English language that we use today.
So, as you reflect on over 2,000 years of bloody history, from Roman legions and Viking longships to the battlefields of Hastings and the brutal Tudor courts, ask yourself this: how much of this ancient warfare is alive right now in the very words you use every single day? Next time you speak, remember, you are literally breathing life into the legacy of conquerors. Thanks so much for joining me on this incredible journey through time today. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you on the next explainer.